Alright guys, so I'm giving the talk tonight, but first, as always, we're going to open up in prayer. Does anyone want to open it up?
Gennaro does.
Gennaro does, yes.
Alright, I'm just going to do it. It's May, so let's do a Hail Mary, alright? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys a video to start off. It's about the parable of the talents. Alright, it's a story in the gospel that Jesus told. And this is just a short video kind of summarizing it, and then I'll explain more about it afterwards.
Once there was a wealthy man preparing to leave on a long journey.
Can you guys hear that?
He gathered his servants together and gave careful instructions on what to do while he was away. I will be leaving you shortly and may not return for quite some time, he explained to them. I'm putting you in charge of my wealth so that my estate will continue to prosper even while I am away. So the master divided his wealth among his servants based on each one's ability to manage it. The first servant was given 5 talents. Each talent was equal to thousands of dollars. This servant took the sum of money given to him, and he immediately went to work, using what he was given to make more money. He knew this would please the master. His efforts produced 5 more talents. The second servant was given 2 talents. Not as much as was given the first servant, but still a great deal of money. This servant took what was given to him and, like the first servant, dutifully invested it to make more money. He too knew this would please the master. His efforts produced 2 more talents. The third servant was given 1 talent, less than the other servants, but still a good amount of money. This servant failed to see the value in the opportunity that the master had given him, and fearing any risk to it, promptly went out and dug a hole and buried it in the ground. Many days, weeks, and months passed, and finally the master returned. Eager to find out the condition of his property and wealth, he called his servants together to hear what they had done with what he had given them to manage. Each servant approached the master to give their report. The first 2 servants proudly showed their master that they had doubled what he had given them. The master smiled. "Well done, my good and faithful servants. You have been faithful with a few things. I will now put you in charge of many things." He added, "Come and let us celebrate." Then the last servant, who had been trusted with 1 talent, approached the master and accused him, saying, "You are a hard man to please, so in fear of you, I buried the money you gave me into the ground. Here is the 1 talent that belongs to you." The master was furious. "You wicked and lazy servant," he said. "I gave you an amount of property I knew you would be able to manage, but you did nothing with it. At least you could have put it in the bank to earn a small amount of interest. Now, you will lose your talent to the servant who gained 5. With that, the master took the only talent the servant had and cast him out of his household forever.
Alright, so that's the video. Who's heard of the parable of the talents before? Now that we've kind of gone over it. Has anyone ever heard of it before? A little bit, some of you. Alright. Well, so talents, as you saw, it was just another way, it was a form of money. So they used gold coins in the video to show that. And one small part that I didn't know if you guys caught was that he gave each servant different amounts of money. But the person narrating the video made sure to say, yet it was still a lot of money. So they were all different amounts, but it was still a lot of money. And this is kind of the first point I want to make. When we think about the money, I want you to think about it not so much as money, but it is about how we describe talents nowadays. Gifts, talents. Maybe some of us are good at math, Some of us are good at soccer. Some of us are good at some things and bad at other things. That's the way it goes. But the difference is, it's still a lot of money. It's still important to us. It's still valuable because it's what we're good at. And the first thing that I want to talk about is comparison. It happens a lot in middle school, I remember. It still happens to me today. We tend to compare ourselves to others, our talent to their talent. She's better than me at this. I'm better than her than that. Comparison is really dangerous and it's not healthy. We were given these gifts, like I said, soccer, math, or just virtues, certain virtues that we tend to show more often by God. And He wants us to use them to build up the kingdom. And if we start comparing our gifts and talents to other people's gifts and talents, it does no good. It not only takes away from other people using their talents, but it starts to slowly diminish our use of our talents to others as well. So it doesn't benefit anyone. So as I speak about talents moving forward, that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about your personal gifts and talents that you think you have now. And you have them because God gave them to you. Alright? In comparison to the servant that buried it, right? The others used it. And they saw growth. Their talents multiplied. And that's what happens with us. When we use our talents, we grow. We get better. When we practice soccer, we get better at soccer. When we practice math, we get better at math. When we help teach others math, sometimes we understand it better. The more we use our talents, the more we grow in those talents. And the more others grow. Because now, if I help someone with math, they may be better at math now too. So they can share in that talent. And so when we think about our talents, we want to use them in ways that will benefit others, ways that will build up God's kingdom. Now, what do you think building up God's kingdom really means? Does anyone know or have an idea? Yeah, Patrick.
Making the world a better place.
Making the world a better place, yeah. So we've kind of talked about that in the past, right? Like loving others, treating them how we want to be treated. So yeah, I would say that counts. Anyone else, especially thinking about past speakers that we've had and what we've talked about, what do you think building God's kingdom looks like? Yeah, Victoria.
Like maybe working together to like with the skills that you have.
Definitely working together with the skills that you have. You have teamwork. We're all God's children, right? It's easier to do a job if we work together than if we work by ourselves usually. I would agree. I'd also say it has to do with virtues. Remember the theological virtues? Does anyone remember what those were? Yes, go ahead.
Hope, faith, and love.
Yep, and growing in those, sharing those with others, loving others. Those is definitely a big way to build up God's kingdom. I'd say another way though is what we talked about last week, which would be saying yes. Remember giving our little yeses? I think that's a huge thing that we can do to build up God's kingdom, because every time we say yes to God is another step forward in faith that we take towards Him. So I want to talk about that. I think saying yes is a big way that we can use our talents in a way that builds God's kingdom. What do I mean by that? Well, the one servant who buried his talent basically said no. He was given his talent and he said no. He said, I'm going to bury this. I'm not going to use it. I think it's worthless. I know you gave this to me, but I think it's worthless. I'm not going to use this to share with others or spread. I'm going to bury it. And in comparison, those other servants said yes. They said yes. So that's what we have to do. We have to say yes. Yes might look like, sitting with that kid at lunch who sits alone. Or helping our parents with the dishes after school. That's what it could look like for you tomorrow. That's what it could look like for you for the rest of the year. But you never know when you're going to be called upon to say yes in a bigger way. And the way we know that is going to be by prayer. So prayer is a big way to know what talents we have. Some of us don't know what talents we have yet, or what we'll be called to do. So in order to realize that, we have to go to prayer. We have to ask God. Sometimes, personally, I'm going to share something every morning when I wake up. That's what I ask God. I say, how can I serve you today? Where do you want me to say yes today? And by saying yes, He might show me something that I had no idea I had within me, a new talent discovered today, tomorrow, the next day. You never know. But you have to start by asking God to reveal these talents to you. And then when he gives them to you, that's where you have to step in and say, yes. Yes, I will. Yes, I do. And then start sharing it with others. All right? For those of you going to high school next year, you're going to start to realize some talents that you never knew you had too. You're going to start doing more and more schoolwork. You're going to be exposed to more and more people and opportunities, and you'll start to realize talents that you have too. As we grow, that's a great part. As we grow, we are given more and more by God. It shows in Monet, you know, she has a great teaching ability. So what does she do? She does this every Wednesday for you guys. She said yes, right? And now she's sharing it with all of us. And I know it's been beneficial. Lou said yes to his wife at the altar. He chose the vocation of marriage. And now the people in his family, he's shared his love with them. You guys can do that too, you know? Brian, not here right now. God willing, he'll say yes to the priesthood. He's in seminary right now. And then every parishioner that he speaks to, just like Father Wayne, and gives the Eucharist to, will be blessed by it. Because he said yes. But those big yeses started with these small yeses in here. It started with Monet realized that, you know, she liked teaching. She liked English, and now she wants to try to go learn. She liked theology, and now she wants to go to college for it. But start with the little yeses in middle school, and then it turns into those big yeses. And that's the last thing I want to talk about, is at the end. This is another part of the gospel, and I don't know if you guys caught it. But he says, you have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. So we're given the privilege of using our talents and using them to build each other up, ultimately towards the greatest yes of all, which is heaven. These little yeses are going to sanctify us and bring us closer to God in heaven. And not just sanctify you yourself, but us, as all children of God. We use our talents separately. We use our little yeses to prepare ourselves to be able to ultimately finally say that final yes and come and share in your master's happiness. So when you go into your small groups, I want you guys to think about what talents you know you have now and how to use them. But then also what you can pray about and how you can become more aware of the talents that may be revealed to you, and how you can plan to share those with others in the future as well. Thank you. That's it, guys.